My name is Fesa, and the day I turned 14, my mother stopped feeding me. Not metaphorically, not because we were struggling, and definitely not because there wasn't enough food in the house. She opened our refrigerator, pulled out the groceries I had been eating my entire childhood, and told me, "Get a job or get out." I actually laughed because I thought she was joking. I mean, seriously, what kind of mother says that to her 14-year-old daughter on her birthday? Then she locked the refrigerator with a metal chain and handed the key to my younger brother, Mason, like he had suddenly become the owner of the house. Mason was 12, and 5 minutes later, my mother placed a plate of pancakes, strawberries, and bacon in front of him. I stood there with an empty stomach, staring at the food I wasn't allowed to touch. That was the moment something inside me broke. I had always known Mason was the favorite, but that morning I finally understood just how little I mattered to them. He got designer sneakers, new electronics, expensive birthday gifts, and whatever food he wanted. I got a lecture about becoming independent. By that evening, I had $12 in my backpack and a list of local businesses written on the back of an old receipt. I applied for my first job at a small diner in Columbus, Ohio, terrified that they would laugh when they saw my age. Instead, they hired me. I started washing dishes after school, then serving tables whenever they needed help. I came home exhausted every night, but I kept one promise to myself. I would never let my mother decide whether I deserved food, shelter, or happiness again. What I didn't know was that 16 years later, that same woman would walk into my luxury wedding in Miami wearing a fake smile and carrying an old envelope, convinced I still owed her something. She had no idea that I had saved every document, remembered every cruel word, and built a life she could no longer control. For the next 4 years, I learned how to survive without expecting anything from my family. Every morning, I woke before sunrise, packed the cheapest lunch I could afford, and went to school pretending everything was normal. After classes, I went straight to the diner, where I washed dishes, wiped tables, and carried boxes until my hands were sore. I hated how tired I was, but I hated feeling helpless even more. At home, the difference between Mason and me became impossible to ignore. My mother bought him a new gaming computer and took him shopping for expensive clothes while I repaired the same 2 pairs of jeans and hid my worn-out sneakers under my bed. Whenever I asked why things were different, she always had the same answer. Mason needs more support than you do. I never argued anymore. I simply started saving every dollar in a small envelope beneath my mattress. By 16, I had added a second job at a grocery store near downtown Columbus. By 17, I was working weekends at a hotel while keeping my grades high enough to qualify for college scholarships. I was exhausted, but something had changed inside me. I wasn't working just to buy food anymore. I was working to escape. Then, on my 18th birthday, my mother placed a typed paper on the kitchen table. I picked it up and read the first line twice. Monthly room rental, $900. I looked at her, waiting for her to smile or admit it was another cruel joke. She didn't. "You're 18 now, Fesa," she said. "If you want to stay here, you pay rent. Otherwise, get out." My father sat beside her without saying a word. Mason was upstairs playing video games, completely untouched by the conversation. I felt something inside me go strangely quiet. I didn't beg. I didn't cry. I went upstairs, packed my clothes, textbooks, work shoes, and savings into 2 black trash bags, and walked out before sunrise. I had no apartment, no family support, and barely enough money for a few weeks, but I had my scholarship acceptance letter. A friend named Brooke let me sleep on her couch in Cincinnati while I worked and attended college. Those months were brutal. There were nights when I ate instant noodles for dinner and wondered if my mother had been right about me. Then I'd remember that locked refrigerator and whisper to myself, "No way. I'm not going back." I graduated with honors, moved to Miami, and started building a career in luxury events. I thought I had finally escaped my past. I was wrong, because 16 years after that refrigerator was locked, my mother would discover exactly what that little girl had become. By the time I turned 22, I had stopped thinking about surviving and started thinking about building something that could never be taken away from me. Miami became my second chance. I rented a tiny apartment in Little Havana, worked during the day for a luxury event company in Brickell, and spent my nights studying how wealthy families plan weddings, charity galas, and private celebrations. I watched everything, from how they chose venues to how they negotiated with vendors, and I took notes like my future depended on it because honestly, it did. My first boss barely noticed me, but I didn't care. I wasn't there to impress anyone. I was there to learn. After 2 years, I had enough savings to launch my own company with a borrowed laptop, one small office, and a client who trusted me with a $40,000 wedding. I nearly cried when she signed the contract. That one job turned into 3, then 8, then dozens. Soon, brides from New York, California, and Texas were flying into Miami specifically to hire my team. By 28, I was planning weddings at oceanfront resorts and private estates for clients whose names appeared in business magazines. By 30, my company had become one of the fastest-growing luxury event firms in South Florida. I bought a waterfront condo, built investments, and finally reached the kind of financial security 14-year-old Fesa could never have imagined. But success wasn't what changed me most. It was realizing that I no longer needed my mother's approval. I hadn't spoken to her or Mason in years. Then, 6 weeks before my wedding, my assistant walked into my office carrying a cream-colored envelope. "Fesa," she said, "someone insisted this be delivered directly to you." I recognized the handwriting immediately. My stomach tightened before I even opened it. Inside was a single sheet of paper from my mother. The first sentence made my hands go cold. "I know you're getting married, and after everything I've sacrificed for you, I expect you to make things right." I read the rest slowly. She claimed she had spent years supporting me, that I had abandoned the family, and that my success was partly because of everything she had supposedly provided. Then came the number, $36,000. She wanted me to pay her before my wedding. I almost laughed. Seriously? The woman who had locked the refrigerator when I was 14 now wanted money because I had become successful. But there was one sentence at the bottom that made me stop laughing completely. "If you refuse, I'll tell your wedding guests exactly what kind of daughter you really are." I stared at that threat for a long moment. Then I picked up my phone and called my attorney. "I need you to find every document connected to my mother and that house," I said, "because I think she's about to make the biggest mistake of her life." 2 days later, my attorney called me with a folder of documents and one sentence I never expected to hear. "Fesa, your mother has been lying to you." Years earlier, when I left home at 18, my father had secretly transferred the title of a small investment property into my name as part of a college trust my grandmother had created before she died. My mother had never told me. Instead, she had used the property, collected the rental income, and convinced herself that because she had raised me, everything connected to my future belonged to her. My attorney showed me the records. The property had generated more than $58,000 in rental income over the years, and legally, every dollar belonged to me. I sat there staring at the documents, realizing my mother had spent years demanding money from the very daughter whose money she had quietly taken. "What do you want to do?" my attorney asked. I thought about that locked refrigerator, the empty cardboard box, the $900 rent demand, and that 14-year-old girl who had walked out carrying 2 black trash bags. "Nothing until my wedding," I said. 3 weeks later, my wedding took place at an exclusive oceanfront estate in Miami Beach, surrounded by white flowers, crystal lights, live musicians, and more than 200 guests. My mother arrived 20 minutes before the ceremony, wearing an expensive dress and carrying the same cream envelope. She walked toward me with a smile that fooled everyone except me. "Fesa," she whispered, "you really should pay me before this gets embarrassing." I looked at her and calmly handed her another envelope. "Open it." Her smile disappeared as she pulled out the documents. First came the property records. Then the rental statements. Then a certified demand from my attorney requiring her to return every dollar she had collected from my property, plus legal fees. Her hands began trembling. "You can't do this to me," she whispered. I smiled softly. "You told me when I was 14, get a job or get out." So, I got a job. I got out. I built everything you said I couldn't. And now you're standing at my wedding demanding a share of my life. The room had gone completely silent. My mother looked around, hoping someone would rescue her, but nobody moved. Then I handed her one final paper. It was the old $900 rental agreement she had forced me to sign at 18. "You wanted proof that I owed you something," I said. "Here's the only thing I owe you." I placed a check for exactly $900 in her hand. "Rent paid. We're even." She stared at it, speechless, while I turned toward my husband. I didn't scream, insult her, or destroy her. I simply walked away. As the music began and everyone applauded, I realized something that little 14-year-old Fesa could never have understood. My mother hadn't given me independence that day. She had accidentally given me the reason to build it. And when I looked around at the life I had created, I knew she could never take it away again.